Our next speaker, Seb, is going to solve that problem for us. Please make him feel very welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, it's working. Thanks, everyone. My name is Seb. I'm part of the LTM crew. I'm here to present a tool that we've been developing called Talkback. We've been using it internally to keep up with InfoSec news and technical research. And it's been useful for us, so we want to share more about it and how it works. Yeah, the main reason we created Talkback was to be more time efficient when catching up with InfoSec and be more productive by having a database of technical resources that we can just query any way we want. Before Talkback, well, we usually go and rely on Twitter, Reddit, internal chats to stay up to date. But the problem would be we'd usually see the same resource being tweeted or posted multiple times in different places. And scrolling Twitter and reading multiple tweets that are essentially pointing to the same resource can be time-consuming. On the other hand, we don't want to only rely on a few curators or newsletters, or we are going to miss out on resources that didn't make it to their selection. They obviously cannot mention every single resource that comes out. And we also had a couple of use cases in mind. Like, it'd be great if we could quickly find all articles that are related to a specific vulnerability or a software product. Specifically, can we find all articles mentioning log4j or a CVE or a function name? So Talkback is an aggregator, but we've tried to make it smart. There are a couple of aggregator sites out there. It's only a couple that I know of. Maybe there's probably more. But essentially, they are all tracking a static list of feeds, which can be RSS feeds or Twitter accounts. Some do both. But what we want is that instead of monitoring a static list of feeds, we want to build that list dynamically. And we want our system to be as automated and self-maintaining as possible. Like, we don't want to be doing any manual moderation. Although it is okay if sometimes we need to do a little bit of supervision and make sure everything is working fine. Sometimes maybe we're going to have to fine-tune the algorithms. But yeah, we want it to be automated as possible. So there was a first version of Talkback ages ago that Matt from LTM created and presented at RuxCon 2012. But the original idea was to observe CVE trends by scraping the Twitter API. He only later made some changes to observe trends of InfoSec resources instead of CVEs. But even though it was kind of working, the design was kind of backwards, and the whole tool needed to be rebuilt from scratch, really. About 10 years later, no one seemed to be wanting to build something like this, so it was time for us to get into it. So before we delve into the nitty-gritty details of how it works, I think it's best I quickly show you what it looks like first. So this is the home page, listing resources collected in the past few days. The title shown here is from parsing the resource content. So if it's HTML, then means we grab the title tag. If it's PDF, we grab the title from the metadata. We use the third-party library Tika, which is an Apache project, to parse any format, like PDF, PowerPoint, and so on. We assign category tags. We use OpenAI to choose from a small set of categories. We also try to assign a type. So on the right-hand side, we try to assign a type to show whether it's news or something more technical, like a blog post. This classifier is quite basic for now, and we want to improve it. You'll see some resources with the NA type where we could not guess the type. Maybe we could use OpenAI here as well. But for now, we rely on just a couple of simple checks. And like, for example, we flag resources as news when we know that the domain is known to focus on news. So in the navbar, you have the home menu, which lists everything. The news menu lists only resources that are news. The technical menu lists everything but news. So you might be interested in the technical menu most of the time. And the color badge that you have on the far right is a resource score, which shows like how hot a resource is. The scoring is based on a few factors, but mainly on the popularity of the resource on social media, but also whether the resource came from a website that's been featured before by reputable curators. And so these are the curators that we actively monitor, and we only use these to like add a way, like weigh in the resource scoring system that we have, so that we don't just rely on social media metrics. Yeah, so again, we don't actually use these as data sources. We just use curators for the scoring system. And so when a resource is specifically mentioned by a curator, we flag that resource as featured. And the featured menu is just a shortcut to only list resources that have been featured. Clicking on a resource is going to open a preview pane on the right. So we display a screenshot, a reading time estimate. We display the summary that we found from parsing the resource. So if it's HTML, it's what's in the description meta tag or the open graph meta tag. We also display a summary generated by OpenAI. We just sent the article and asked OpenAI to summarize in a couple of bullet points. You can bookmark resources and then list them via the saved menu. You don't need to be logged in. It's all kept in your anonymous session. But if you wish the bookmarks to be cross-browser, then you will need to sign in. You can open the resource page to view all the details that we've collected for that resource. Only a few things I want to point out here. We automatically archive the resource on the Wayback Machine, just in case things change or disappear. We display a word cloud to give a quick visual of common unique terms. We display some hosting information that we grabbed from Shodan in the bottom right. This is useful data to track trends related to specific domains and also highlight potentially dangerous URLs. Back to the main page, so you can set a number of filters. You can do a full text search. The content of all the resources is indexed in Elasticsearch. There are about 85,000 resources in total at the moment in Talkback. You can filter by domain, a part of the URL. You can search for a CVE or a CWE. We don't do CPE yet, but this is something we really want to do soon. So now we can get into how Talkback actually works. The general workflow is grab all the data automatically from the data feeds that we are tracking, then run some content analysis to organize and enrich the data, and present the data via a simple website that we want it to be mobile friendly. The UI is fairly basic for now, but we want to add more views in the future. There is a GraphQL API for people wanting to integrate with the Talkback database. So the architecture, this is just a pretty simplified view of it, but basically Talkback is built on Django. The front end is your classic Django MVC pattern. The backend consists of Django Celery, that's running all the tasks to fetch and organize the data. We've got a couple of services running in Docker as well, like Selenium and Tika that I've mentioned before. The data model, this is just a snippet, but I just wanted to show that a resource can have more than one item. The same resource may have been posted on Reddit and also tweeted on Twitter, but it's the same resource essentially. So where do we get our data from? Well, we have to start somewhere. So our initial seeds are Reddit, Twitter, and a couple of popular conference archives. Once we've loaded a number of resources in Talkback, we search for the RSS feed of the home site where that resource is from, so that we will get the next articles straight from the source instead of social media. We don't subscribe to every single feed, but we want to start tracking the feed if the reputation score is high enough. Otherwise, obviously, we can manually subscribe, but we want it to be automated. The scoring is based again on like was this home site featured before by a curator? What's the average score of all the resources that came from that home site? And then we loop back to step one. Yeah, but we wish we didn't have to rely on Twitter, but or Reddit, but we kind of need that central forum place where people are going to share about new sites that we've never heard about before. Otherwise, we're just going to keep on tracking on the same sites. So when a new resource comes in, a series of content analysis modules are run. So first, we got to grab a copy. So we use a headless browser because some websites are going to block raw GET requests. Some websites actually load content client-side. We save the raw data to disk, so we have a copy to work on offline. Next, we want to extract the main article. So if it's HTML, it's actually not that easy, although it's quite important, because we don't want to include text or links that are not related to the article. Most websites, have a section like a footer or a sidebar with, related articles that you might be interested in. So it's important we don't include these, or it's going to mess with what's indexed in Elasticsearch and the cross-referencing that we do. Once we've extracted the main article, we look for CVEs, CWEs, and cross-references to other resources. And you'll find these references on the resource page. And for the CVEs, we actually use the NVD API to show more information about any referenced CVEs. And then with the references to resources that are already in Talkback, you can click on it. It's going to open the preview page, the preview pane, and you can go from there. So there's a fair bit of modules running in the background in Django Celery. Some are pretty straightforward. I'm not going to go into every single one of them, but every single thing that we do, we've listed it specifically on a blog post that we published recently, and I'm just putting a link to that blog post at the end. So now with the GraphQL API, well, you will need to sign in to access it, but you can create an account for free. Then you can use the built-in GraphQL UI to explore the schema and execute the queries that you want. Or you can grab an API key from your profile page and use your favorite client. So what I'm showing here is just a simple request to search all resources that mention the log4j keyword. And but you can come up with your own use cases. One of the use cases that we explored was to use tree-sitter to retrieve the function names from a source code repo and then query the API to see what blog posts would come up that mention these function names. So I've got a video of that use case. Hopefully. No. Yet. So it's probably going to be a bit too small for you at the back, but this video, you'll find it on the blog post as well. But so the use case that we have, with just a small Python script, we use tree-sitter to extract all the function names from a code repo, and then for every function name, we're going to query the API and see if we have blog posts that mention this function name. So yeah, there's only basically 2 steps to that script. And I'm just showing everything that you need to install if you want to run it yourself. Python version, the dependencies that you need to install. Next, I think I'm installing tree-sitter. And then I'm cloning the Espressif source code repo, and I'm going to run the script against the bootloader support component. And so what it's doing, it's extracting every single function name, and it's asking the API, okay, what resources mention this function. And yeah, you get a couple of hits, then you can go ahead and open like this resource and see what if they're saying anything interesting about that function name. Okay, how do I get back? Okay. Yeah, so that was it for the demo. A couple of things that were not super straightforward, like a couple of hurdles that we came across. Just want to mention a few of them here. The first one was like detecting and merging duplicates. Due to the nature of URLs, that's actually not something that's super easy to deal with. But we're trying our best. So we're using Selenium to dereference the URL and follow any HTTP redirects. We do a little bit of URL canonicalization, remove tracking tokens that we know of, and we look for the canonical meta tag in the source code of the HTML page. This should give like the true URL for that resource, but actually, like not every page has that tag, and actually not every website uses that correctly. But we're still trying to use that when it's there, and yeah, we do our best here to detect duplicates and then merge them. Twitter, so we used to use the Twitter API when it was free. So we used to have this chart on the right that shows like how many tweets per day are linking to that resource. That was a cool chart. But then the API was no longer free, and it was quite expensive for us. So I think like the basic tier was like $100 a month, but the caps were even lower than when it was free, when the API was free. So basically, if we wanted to be able to do what we used to do with the free Twitter API, we will have to pay for the Pro tier, which is $5,000 a month. So we stopped doing that kind of stuff. But we're still scraping Twitter, just without the API. Then, yeah, bot protections, they can be pretty annoying. So even though we're using Selenium, we still get blocked every now and then. I think mostly because we're coming from DigitalOcean IP address space. Yeah, it's pretty annoying. And like recently I saw, like even to access a RSS feed, I was getting blocked by Cloudflare. Like I had to solve a challenge, which makes no sense. Because it was an RSS feed, I should be able to access it with any user agent I want. Then there was also, we had to come up with the concept of home. That's just because some websites have, are multi-user, typically GitHub and Medium. And because we are scoring, we have this scoring system in place, and we also try to link a RSS feed to a home. Yeah, we had to come up with that concept. The thing is, it's pretty hard to do automatically, like to automate it. So for now, we have to specifically implement that logic. So like for instance, a site like blog.google, they have /tech, they have /advisories, they have /research or whatever. And this is a different home every time. But yeah, this is a bit of a challenge. When we search for the RSS feed for a home, it's actually not that easy. Again, due to the nature of the web being so loosey-loosey. So what we do, we try to, we look in the HTML for the meta tag, obviously, but it's not always there. So we try to go back up the directory in the URL, trying to go back to the home site, look again in the HTML. We try a couple of common names like /feed, /RSS, just to name a few. But then we sometimes also like end up with actually several candidates, but most of them are bogus feeds. You're gonna have like the comments feed for like the blog post, and we don't want that. But what we do is that the right feed is actually the one that's mentioning the last two resources that we loaded in Talkback, and we're doing pretty good with that logic so far. OpenAI, yeah, sometimes can be a bit weird and inconsistent. Like even with the temperature set to 0, sometimes it's gonna choose a category name that I didn't like mention. And sometimes they're also going to give me responses that are not in the JSON format. But it's actually pretty rare. I didn't like try to see the frequency of that, but it's probably about like maybe 1 every 500 queries. And the resource scoring, so yeah, it's a combination of different factors with different weights. Yeah, we wanted the scoring algorithm to be as generic as possible, and to remove our own personal bias as much as possible. So what we plan to do next? Well, we want to be able to pass CPEs. It's a pretty simple regex, so it shouldn't be too complicated. Then once we have that, we can search by vendor or product. So that'll be super useful. Like I mentioned, we want to improve the resource type classifier. We want to see how we can deal with non-English resources. For now, we just don't. We want to improve the UI, make it more useful, like to catch up with what like with the new resources that just came up, maybe do something like what they've done on Slack, where you can maybe swipe right. You're not interested, or you mark it as read, swipe left, just save it for later. Something to think about. Yeah, we want to add a couple more views, group by vulnerability, group by technology, have a proper dashboard to get a good overview, like quickly, of what's been happening in the last week also. And yeah, then maybe we can use OpenAI again to generate our own weekly list of must-read articles or podcast, or we'll see what we can do. And that's it. That's it for Talkback. Thanks for listening. See, yep,
Thank you so much, Seb. I will give that a go when I get home.